Good evening.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you tonight?
I'm all right.
I realized I left my water bottle in a different room.
You need to go grab it?
I'll be okay right now.
Okay. So I saw we have a couple of items of follow-up.
Yeah. I'm gonna go real fast with them. I like it. I'm gonna go ahead and ruin it and say you were right. You got it right with Plex.
And here I was going to wait and jump in.
No. I feel like that sort of thing should be celebrated, and it's what you lead with. You lead with being right, you know. Yeah. So Plex was a port of XBMC, which is Xbox Media Center, for the Mac, and I think it's now called Kodi. XBMC is now called Kodi.
You know, I haven't followed the development of XBMC since I started using Plex, but I do remember using it once before, back when the interfaces were extremely similar, and it was pretty solid.
I don't think I ever used XBMC, but I know that I started using Plex. So according to Wikipedia, Plex was ported in, now I can't remember if it was 2007 or 2008. It was the end of the year. It was December 2007, and I started using it based on a video I saw on when Macworld had a video podcast. They had a video about Plex, and I started using Plex in 2009. So I've been using Plex almost as long as it's been out.
I'll have to go back and look and see when I started using it. That'd be an interesting piece of follow-up.
Yeah. I regret not getting the lifetime membership, but it's all good.
So then I had one quick piece of follow-up. I was complaining about after doing the updates to the TV, that the LG home tab screen thing would come on every time I turned the TV on. And I did suffer through the menu system long enough to find where to turn that off.
Gotcha.
I don't remember now whether it was under the general settings or if it was under the power saving stuff, but the setting was basically display home on power on and turn it on or off.
I confirmed that I have all of my power settings, like the power saving things that mess up my screens, or that dims the whole display itself when the screen is black. I did confirm that I have everything turned off or to the lowest setting as possible, and it still does this. It's a horrible feature, and I would like it's a thing. Like the next time I buy a TV, like I was like, I need to see a black screen with like a few white letters to make sure that it does or does not do this thing. So I think it will depend on what backlight technology is driving the display.
Yeah, I could see that. The other piece, is this technically follow-up, or is this something?
Yeah, it is follow-up, because I mentioned last week that I mentioned and we talked about whether or not we'll see dual processor
systems on a chip. Yeah, okay, I remember that briefly now.
Yeah. And so I happen to I remember listening to another podcast, and the description of the various iterations that are going to be, I guess this information was leaked. And then I came across this video that was a more succinct way of describing what was going on with, visual representation. And I thought I was like, oh, we will see. So like basically it's going to happen. It's just not going to be, they're not actual, because it's a system on a chip. They're not going to say this is a dual processor. Like you would have you could get dual Xeon Mac Pros. Like it won't, it's not exactly the same thing, but I think you could extrapolate that it is the same thing, but it wouldn't be marketed or described that way.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the notes for the episode. But to summarize it, the idea is that the industry is moving toward a chiplet type of architecture. And so multiple chiplets would be more or less multiple iterations of processing cores. and how it's cut and fabricated kind of dictates what you get out of it.
Right.
But the video does a much, much better job of describing it.
Yeah. I like that they give John Syracuse props for his chip.
Yeah, I laughed when
drawing.
I saw that. About as much as I laughed every time he would hold up the iMac like it was an iPad.
I love that too, and I was like, because you actually can. But I will say, I cannot remember if it was that video or a different video that I saw where they were talking about the iMac and how it's got the chin, and the chin is sort of iconic of the iMac. And I'm over here sitting at this iMac G4, and I was like, it doesn't have a chin. It's like the display is just a display, and it doesn't have to have a chin. This is unrelated to follow-up. I just thought I'd say that since we were talking about the iMac.
Fair enough. And just to call it out, the video is by the folks over at Snazzy Labs. But again, I'll put the link in the show notes.
I like the Snazzy folks. They're pretty good. Yeah. I kind of, it'd be fun to walk around with an iMac like an iPad.
Yeah, and just because I know just based on the general weight profile of the iPad, it was just hilarious to think about because it's not like it's that different. And so it's just picking it up and holding it in all sorts of different ways, and it's just hilarious to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So that wraps up follow-up, and then we get to talk about the WWDC 2021 event. But before we actually go into any subtopics there, did you have any kind of overall takeaways or feelings or thoughts that you wanted to lead with?
I did. And it was, I felt underwhelmed. And it was weird because when I went back and looked at some of the features, I was like, that's really cool. And that's really cool. And that's there's a lot of cool stuff that they talked about. But overall, I felt pretty underwhelmed by the whole thing. And it's not because I was hoping they would announce some hardware. It's just that a lot of the features, I was like, this would have been good a year and a half ago. And some of the other features are I felt like everything individually feels like a point release and not a new, these are the new features. But part of that is because it's a very mature platform, but yeah, I don't know. Even though there's some significant things that were announced that are kind of a big deal, it as a whole it felt underwhelming.
I can understand that. I had the same initial thought, and it wasn't until going back and re-scrubbing through and making the notes on the different just kind of high-level topics, for lack of better phrasing, that I started to think there's more here than what was actually presented. It's very much a take everything and refine it release, which I can applaud. I find it is much needed very often anyway. And I think if we think back through Mac iterations, Snow Leopard was a perfect example of that.
I was just thinking that Snow Leopard is one of the best releases that they ever. It was one of the best versions of Mac OS X.
And after kind of rescrubbing through, well, I guess in tandem with rescrubbing through the keynote, I also installed iOS 15 on an iPhone and kind of put hands and visualizations to some of those features, and it made a big difference. And we can go into a couple of those as we go through, but the kind of the key standout already that I can see really just being a massive removal of friction are the enhancements to the application of machine learning to photos. And so we'll save diving into it for when we get to that feature, but that alone I think is well worth the entire OS update itself.
Wow.
Yeah, in practice, it's pretty slick.
Well, do you want to start there?
Uh, I I made the notes in the order of kind of how things were introduced via the keynote. Do we want to go in that order, or do we want to just kind of skip around? Because I kind of feel like part of what seemed underwhelming by it, which is actually kind of remarkable on the flip side of it, is that a lot of the things they talked about were talked about in multiple OS iterations.
Yes, something that was something I was paying attention to. It's like they announced, they talk about something in iOS 15, and it's like, oh, well, this has to work on the next version of Mac OS and iPad OS, and so and it does. Like, that's the thing. I think that might be part of why it felt underwhelming, is because you got a little bit of it here and then a little bit, and they're basically adding all of the same features to 3 different platforms, and it's hard to present that in all of the detail, because you have to present the iOS, how it looks like, or how it affects you on iOS here, and they had to actually decide, okay, we're going to talk about this feature, and then we're going to say that it carries over into the other other platforms. Where do we talk about this in iOS? Do we talk about it in Mac OS? And so, I don't know. It's a tricky place to be. So,
but it is the first time in recent history that all of the different OSs get the same features as well, which that's the kind of remarkable piece.
I was gonna say that's pretty refreshing, because like we know the times that they don't. That's something like, well, this is great, but also why can't it be done here or whatever? So. If you look at the notes, I changed them so that if you don't want to go in the order that they were listed, if you want to pick an order, they're now check marks.
Yeah, I saw it change while I was looking at the screen. It took me a second because I wasn't sure if I did something inadvertently that was new in the OS or not. I've had a couple of odd moments where a gesture or something has invoked something new that I didn't expect.
You ought to be used to that using the Apple TV remote.
Yeah. Well, since I talked about it a little bit, let's jump on into the machine learning with the photos.
Is that the photos, live text, and visual lookup?
Yeah. So live text alone is pretty awesome in practice. Just scrolling through the photo library, I randomly would select a handful of different photos here and there just to see if it would detect text. And I've got one that just completely blew me away. It's a picture of Emily and Jacob dyeing eggs, I think, or something, like at the island in the kitchen. And there's a sheet of paper laying over to the side that is definitely not like trying to take a picture of that sheet of paper, right? It's semi-obscured, and it recognized 99% of the words on that sheet of paper at an odd angle, and I could select it and copy and paste.
That's awesome.
Like, that one alone kind of blew me away. And so then I started really picking through the library and figuring out, what actually does this feature do? And I'm really bad about just taking a picture of something for reference anyway. The fact that now I don't have to go back and try to transcribe any of that, I can just select it and do what I want with it. That's just huge for me personally.
Well, I think, like the feature, like these features have been around for a while. Like, you could buy, you get a third-party application to do this. I think it's been first party in Android for a while as well. But, and this is why we like Apple, and that is like the way it's integrated by Apple will probably be the best implementation of these features. Let alone, aside from the actual quality of the feature itself, like how well the difference between implementing it as how well the feature works versus implementing it into, or integrating it into the OS. the combination of those two things feels like it's going to be like a big deal. So many times, like I've wanted, visual lookup is really. I remember watching that being really interesting. I was like, man, now I can figure out if this is poison ivy or not, without like posting it somewhere. And so, anyway, yeah, I think I'm pretty excited about that. Even though, I don't know, it's not a flashy feature, but I think it will be used way more than like quote unquote a flashy feature.
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't play a lot with the visual lookup component. I put them together as one topic since they're mostly related. Scrolling through the library, it's not as clear on some photos that there could be more information. You actually have to select the photo and then notice a indicator at the bottom that you can click on that then brings up that overlay, which it makes sense in practice when you're using it. That just wasn't showed off. So it took a moment of, I knew what I was looking for and I had to just figure out what the discovery method would be. But it does work. Whether it works well or not, I didn't have a large enough sample of photos to kind of pull from. The couple that I pulled up, it wasn't accurate on, but they were misleading enough in the way they were done that I could understand why it wouldn't be. For example, I have a miniature cedar bonsai, and that one had this particular application of machine learning. I really don't know what else you would call it. They called it visual photos. And so I selected the link, and it pulled up a different tree, but looking at the examples, the needle pattern and everything was very similar. And the fact that it's a bonsai means it doesn't look like a cedar anyway.
Right.
And so I can understand why that would be misidentified. All that to say that I need to see more of that in practice to get a better feel for how useful that is. But it seems useful understanding that it's not meant to necessarily be perfect. And so, like for plant identification, like in the wild, I would expect it to identify them well. Something that is shaped or modified from its, in-wild counterpart, your results are not going to be what you expect.
Yeah. Bonsai is a very, first of all, it's miniaturizing it, and as well as shaping it very, the shaping of it's very intentful. Whereas, something out in the wild, like even if it's, the bonsai is controlled, whereas like something out in your yard is manicured.
Right.
So, yeah, I could see how that would be the trickier thing to identify. But
and then the other picture that as I was scrolling through, I noticed had extra information was an older picture of my cat before he passed, and he was a mongrel, so to speak. It was a product of a couple of strays, but his markings were very consistent with a specific breed of cat, and so the image made it look like he was this particular breed of cat, and of course it matches right on an image level. It's just that I know pedigree-wise that's not what he was.
Right.
Now, the tricky part is that he could very well have been some significant portion of that pedigree, and I wouldn't know because the only thing I know is the mother cat, what she looked like. I have no clue what she mated with, etc., and the pedigree of the two lines. So it could have been relatively accurate, but I don't have any way of verifying that.
Yeah, the only way you could verify that was like gene sequencing.
Well, I mean, if you had a registered dog, for example, a pure blood breed that you knew the pedigree, and you took a picture, that would be a good, easy way to cross-reference and compare.
Actually, it'd be kind of fun, there are people that get the gene sequence of their pets, so they can understand like it's this much that, and it's like 23andMe for your pet, and it'd be fun to see how that would compare, like the actual genotype compares with what the phone says. This looks like that dog.
Could certainly be interesting.
It could be a whole study.
It probably will be before too long.
It will be. Some dog mom or dog dad's going to be so into it that's it's going to fit with their senior thesis, and it's going to work out. They're going to know folks that have they're going to know how to find animals that have their gene sequencing done, and it'll be a cool project. I'd read it. I'd at least read the abstract. Were there any other thoughts you had about photos?
I don't think so. I think those cover, like, that alone has just been kind of the wow factor feature for me. And most of it is because I have so many photos that I've taken of text just to be able to reference that it's just huge for me being able to just grab that and copy and paste it into something else to actually manipulate or do something with for historical purposes.
Yeah, I think this feature will work into most, like, the majority of users' workflow pretty quickly. And it'll I think we'll become fairly reliant upon it very soon.
The other set of features that I'm interested in, but I don't really have much to say on, I just wanted to call them out, are the privacy-centric features, specifically within Mail and Safari and the app privacy report. Those were 3 different segments that they talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have anything to say about them other than I appreciate the efforts and I look forward to seeing what it means in practice. Like, we can honestly check them off with just that.
Yeah. I'm kind of, it feels like this is just the next level of their approach to the idea that privacy is a human right. And I think every iteration of the software will continue to see iteration upon iteration of privacy. So I had nothing much to say about it either, but it's like this is now what Apple, this is always, or I would expect, well, at least while Tim Cook is at the helm, we're going to continue to see this level of attention and detail of or presentation of privacy at every software event.
Yeah, I like it just because it's why I choose to leverage a number of Apple services when other services would technically be better in experience for a lot of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I think of the 3, the app privacy report I'm most intrigued by because it gives you a better understanding of what an app might be doing, even though you've either asked it not to track or have disabled certain components to see if a developer is trying to get around that. And if you care enough, you can make a more informed decision about whether you continue to leverage that app and its services or not. And I like having access to that information, even if I don't personally decide to follow through on it.
Yeah, I mean it's there. It's there for you to choose whether or not you look at it. So I think it might go fairly. I think the people that want it, they're gonna start using it, and if nothing else, it's a little more bringing the idea of like app tracking to the forefront of everyone's knowledge is a good thing. I feel like we should talk about the mail privacy.
You have something specifically on the mail privacy, or?
Oh, I'm just glad that they're providing a way to, hide, the hiding of the email addresses, being able to have alternate email addresses, and as well as blocking the, the ability for senders to like link, like opening an email with other online activity. I mean, I knew that like I knew from others like learned about this from other sources. Like about you could open up an email. There's a tiny pixel, like a pixel size image that gets loaded, and they can track every time and the initial opening of the email and every time you look at that email because of that image, that pixel size image loading. And I think that's clever but nefarious, or not even nefarious, but just it's invasive. And so I like seeing that at an OS level that is being blocked, and so it's a good idea.
Yeah, I just didn't have much really to say about it other than let's see how it actually plays out in practice. Like the folks who want to track have a reason to try to find ways around it too, and so we'll see what the next iteration and back and forth looks like. And I think overall it's a good step in the right direction. I just don't think it's necessarily far enough yet.
It's always going to be a game of cat and mouse.
That does kind of lead into something they didn't really explain or go into detail on, but the change to iCloud services and having a private relay /VPN as a part of iCloud Plus. I like the idea, but I don't know anything about it yet. And so I really can't comment on it, but I do appreciate that there's an attention to other ways to attempt to route traffic and all as well to help obscure your activity and make it more private.
Yeah. When I was watching it, I was like, ooh, they kind of just skimmed over that. They didn't give a lot of details, and it was just kind of like it's included at the same price, and it just like the whole like the details. There's not a lot of details. It was a rather vague set of features, or rather, it's like a specific set of features, but how it's actually going to work is fairly vague, and so I figure there's a lot of stuff that just wasn't ready with it, but they're moving in that direction, and hopefully it won't see the fate of AirPower.
Yeah, I mean, that's of course always a concern, but I don't think anything on the services side is really at risk of, for lack of better phrasing, being air-powered.
No.
Just potentially delayed.
Yeah. I like that. They were, in the old day they had Sherlocked, and now we have air-powered.
Yeah, I think it's fitting.
Oh yeah, I'm using it.
All right, so those were really the main things that I wanted to just make sure I mentioned. So with that, unless you have a specific topic you want to jump into, I say we just kind of head back up to the top of the list and talk about FaceTime.
I don't have a lot to say about this, but it goes with Siri privacy. I'm glad that they've made Siri more private. Not because I felt like there was a privacy issue, because most of the time, like I want Apple engineers to see how much I'm cussing at Siri because she's that awful. But the fact that there's a lot of things that will not require an internet connection, like I want to start a timer. That's just gonna. I think for the first time, I'm like, oh, well, I might actually use Siri more. Like she might actually get better because they're, there's on device, it's leaving me how they describe the feature.
Well, I would just phrase it as there's some level of on device processing and capability.
I mean, I think the capability was always there. It's just, at least to start a timer, that should have never left the device. But anyway, I'm glad they're moving that there, at least for a usability, or from the standpoint of usability, not just security.
Yeah, I do like the prospect of it moving on device and potentially becoming more useful via machine learning or AI understanding my voice and requests better, potentially as a result. I haven't really tried it other than to ask Siri if she was still garbage, and she got the request completely wrong. So, yeah, we'll see.
They mentioned like the change, like there will be more voices, and they showed off one, and then it was like, oh, that's it. And I felt like that was kind of awkward. I was like, I think maybe just because the event they're speeding, they're just going through the event pretty quickly, and they didn't want to spend, here's a sample of all 20 voices or all 5 voices, however many voices they're going to be. It was just like, there's at least one more voice.
Yeah, I haven't even actually looked. I changed the voice to, was it UK female sometime back, and I like hearing the random pronunciations of things, and so I leave it there.
Fun. So the thing that I actually really liked was maps, like the changes that they made to maps. I remember like when maps first came out and trying to use it, and it was pretty, most of the time okay, but a few times I got burned by it, and that has since more or less gone away. There's a few times where Google Maps is like, oh, just a little bit better, but most of the time, for most applications, Apple Maps is great. But the way, well, one, adding the topography and showing complicated lane changes is a feature that I think is going to be really cool. One, it looks cool, but two, it's going to be incredibly helpful to see how certain intersections look. I remember that being a really tricky issue in the days of I was using a Garmin, and I remember like a friend of mine had a Magellan, and driving around the New York metro area with those devices was most of the time helpful, but sometimes led you to the wrong road, and that was not great. And being able to see complicated lane changes is going to be pretty cool, especially for folks that live in cities with complicated lane changing. So I thought that was really cool. I thought the sort of touches that they put on the maps, it was really cool. And honestly, the topography thing is actually one of the things that I find most interesting about it.
Yeah, I haven't played with maps much really in a while. Maps has worked well for me for a long time, ever since the first wave of revisions anyway, however many years ago. And even around here, there'll be a lot of times where directions will say X lane and then, turn toward the right, or like there's more, what's the more complex direction giving than anything I ever got off of an old GPS device anyway. And so overall, I've had very positive experiences with Apple Maps. Even from the beginning, I did see some of those frustrations manifest themselves when I was visiting specific other places. And so I understand that they're not perfect. And, around here, though, it's been pretty much 100% reliable for me. That said, I also don't really go off the beaten path in a place where I take directions. If I'm kind of veering out and looking around at something random, I'm not navigating to a specific locale. I'm just out driving. So I'm not relying on maps or anything else to guide me, because that's not what I'm after. I'm out looking for just random locations, typically location scouting for photo shoots, that kind of thing. And that's where I could care less about the directions. I just want to go see what's out here. And then I'll get somewhere and say, okay, now give me directions back to, home or wherever I'm going.
Right.
But that's always worked well for me. So while I appreciate every update to maps, because it does make it more useful and more reliable, I just haven't seen an issue that I felt needing addressed in quite a while either.
Yeah, I feel like it was really the first year of using maps was rough at times. To the point where it was like I was cross-checking, like new places I was like cross-checking cross-referencing with Google Maps once it was available as a standalone app. But really, after the first year, I don't recall doing that very often or at all. And if you had asked me Sunday, hey, what new features do you think Maps should have? And I was like, I don't know. It's really good. Like, it does the things I need it to do. Maybe the search, when I search for a name of a person that's in my contacts to, get directions to their house, like, it takes, I have to almost type the entire name, like first and last name, to get it to come up. And that's kind of annoying, but I could also just go to the contacts app and search from there. But that's the only thing I could think of that I would say. But then I see these new features that they've announced about Maps, and I was like, I like all of them. I think all of them are really cool, and I didn't know how much I wanted them until I saw them. So I like Maps to begin with. I think Maps are a fun thing to play with. So maybe that's why I'm kind of excited about it. But it's probably the most exciting thing in what I would otherwise call an underwhelming keynote or event.
I can understand that. I think where I would find it more exciting would be if it's delved beyond. Let me back up and reconstitute the phrasing. Instead of having a focus on navigation via transit or driving, etc., if it could start to integrate maps of parks and having more detail in those areas without having to go to the individual different park services or whoever to get those details, that's where I would find it more exciting for my use case. But, it just also goes back to, like, it's been phenomenal for me so far. Like, for a day-to-day use, I just haven't had any problem with Maps for a long time. I do like the addition of discovery features, especially if I'm going visiting somewhere, but I haven't done that long enough that I'm just not excited about it. It's one of those things where, like, even foreseeable travel, it's going to be to places that I've been that I want to get back to and relax and unwind. So I don't currently have a destination where some of those features might really shine, but I do appreciate them and I like having them. I'm just not necessarily excited about them yet.
I understand that. I get excited for this sort of visual tweak on a thing like this. So
I did notice the redesigned look immediately, and I like it.
Oh, I even when they were showing it, and I pulled out my phone to look at the app, and I was like, oh yeah, even the app icon is different. Like, you could tell so actually it'll probably be the feature that I look forward to most. I think the second feature that I'm looking forward to most, especially if it gets implemented quickly for where we work, is the ability to open doors with Apple Wallet, like having like your security card for work in your Apple Wallet. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I refrained from making a bullet point about it only because there was a lot to unpack there that I didn't know how much it would rely on the addition of other hardware or updated hardware. Nothing about the keynote tells you anything about the technology that's underlying, right? So does it work with older badge readers where you could potentially simulate that communication, or does it require an updated, keypad and hardware, etc.?
I feel like most badge readers, like the badge readers we use at work, badge readers, that style of badge, like I think it's been NFC for like a long time.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's compatible, right? I mean, that was my question mark. Like, I like the idea and I'm intrigued by it, but I didn't understand well enough whether it was, oh, it'll work with, this range of vendors' products for the past decade, or, oh, but it's going to have to be something that's installed 2021 or later, that kind of thing.
Right. So I guess the reason why I got excited is because I saw the list of vendors, and they're pretty common vendors. And assuming that a lot of badges have been working like this or been using NFC, there's an NFC chip inside your badge. It seemed like it would be up to the discretion of whoever manages the system. It doesn't look like it would have to be new hardware. So the key for your car, like they showed that last year, or they showed it with the iPhone. I don't know. They showed it. It's not the first that's not the first time we've seen the key for your car, because they talked about, hey, you have BMW, you can you have your smart key on your phone. That's new hardware for sure. But the badge readers, I would expect that it doesn't require new hardware. But it all depends on whether the company who's managing it is going to allow you to use it.
There's potentially an easy way to test that too. Let me do some experimentation. I'll mark that as follow-up. I have an idea there about how it might be able to be tested, but I need to understand a little more about whether there's any potential level of signing or encryption on NFC chipsets.
Okay. I also thought the being able to put your state ID in your wallet, that was pretty cool too. But it's a pretty limited list of states that are doing that.
Yeah, we're not going to see that for 60 or so years.
Yeah, well, I was surprised. I think the first state that's ready to go is Louisiana.
Yeah, I just do not see Alabama doing anything like that, honestly, in the next decade. Even though it would make things so much better, I just don't see it happening.
I think it'll roll out a little bit sooner than that. I think it'll roll out a bit faster than that. It won't. It doesn't mean we won't be the last state to do it or one of the last states to do it, but I think it'll be everybody's doing it. We have to do it because it will be rather convenient. I don't expect it to replace I don't expect to not have to get a physical card, but I just think it would be something in addition to that. But we'll see.
I do look forward to the day where I could theoretically travel with just a phone and maybe have, my passport packed away in luggage as a backup.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm hopeful for sure. I really love the concept. I don't see mass adoption fast enough for it to really make a meaningful impact.
I mean, airlines rolled out the use of gate tickets on your phone really fast, faster than I thought it would, and those are really convenient.
Yeah, and I mean, Apple even mentioned that TSA is on the list for initial adoption, and so it's great from that perspective. My concern is that, okay, great, I can use it for the actual flight, but then once I land, can I use it, or do I have to resort to a physical ID? And there's enough ambiguity there that because it's left, let's back up slightly. In the United States, it's left up to each state to be able to adopt it, right? And so just domestic travel, interstate travel, it's questionable. So I, for now, at least, I would be carrying the phone, hoping I could use just it. And when I land, we'll see what happens, right?
Right.
International travel adds another level of complexity because I'm assuming that it's not a feature that rolls out internationally to every country on day one.
Oh, certainly not.
And so what does that look like from an adoption timeline? And who makes those decisions? Like, does Apple have to provide certain levels of support first, and then the country can opt in? You know, how all of that works influences timeline for adoption. And so I could see in the near future, like if you were traveling between, say, the United States and most of Europe, that's probably going to work out fairly well. But if you wanted to go to, somewhere in Africa, somewhere in Russia or around Russia, maybe not so much, right? And what's it mean for like U.S. Mexico or U.S. Canada or South America? Places where adoption of those types of technologies doesn't come as quick more often than not. And that's not saying there aren't outliers, but generally speaking, it's going to be these countries are eligible first from Apple's perspective, and then how quick do those countries decide to adopt? And then it's going to eventually get to a point where, okay, now it's widespread enough. Let's open it up for this group of countries or whoever.
Yeah, the whole way that I was thinking about it and the whole way that I was interested in it was unlike how you've described it. Like I was thinking it was like I never thought this to be a replacement for carrying the physical copy of my identification. I always just thought, oh, there are certain places where I won't have to pull out the physical copy. I can just show them the official copy that's on my phone. And that's how I've thought about it. And so it's like, I feel like, and at least in our lifetime, we're probably always going to have to provide, have on our person a physical passport that gets stamped with ink. But like if you're coming back into the United States, I can just show you the one on my phone. Or if, hey, I need to, I don't know, certain I'm trying to think of like a low, like why would I show my, like, oh, I'm buying a bottle of wine. I need to see your ID. I just, double tap on the sleep wake button on my phone. Here's my ID. I don't have to pull it out of my wallet or whatever. That's sort of the use case I was thinking of. I think you're thinking of the most, the strictest use case, or the use case where, or the use of like, I'll never have to carry the physical version. So I look at this and I just see this as an addition, not a replacement for.
Yeah, I think the other way to think about it is that I see the appeal for being able to just carry the one device and not have to have a wallet at all. And I'm ready for that future. I was ready for it a decade ago. And I'm impatient to see it realized. And I know that it's not going to be realized in my lifetime. Even though the technology may exist and we're making solid progress down that path. But why should I have to carry a wallet and a phone? And then in addition to that, I have a watch that can synchronize that stuff as well, right? So I have multiple ways to get at this information. Let me just use the one that's most convenient to me.
Let's not forget, there are people in this world that are like, oh, I didn't realize my battery was at 1%. I need to charge it up before, there's that too. So,
yeah, and it goes back to, I can still see even in a world that I envision where I can just carry the phone, I would still have a physical ID and a physical method of payment stashed away within easy access, right? But I could still get rid of carrying the wallet itself. That's kind of my fixation. I don't want to carry insurance cards and IDs and payment methods and whatever other ancillary crap gets stuffed in there, because it gets thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker, and therefore uncomfortable over time, right? And I continually attempt to refine what I carry to the bare minimum, and I just don't want to carry it anymore. I'm already carrying a phone. I can store all this stuff on the phone if you would just accept it as valid. Let me do it.
I mean, well, Apple Pay's made that like pretty. You can think about like Apple's made that pretty significant possibility, or there's a big hurdle that's overcome with Apple Pay, because there's a lot of times where it's like, oh, I don't like to keep my wallet in my pocket while I'm sitting. So consequently, whenever I'm in my car, it's not in my pocket. And so there's a lot of places that I have the thought where it's like, I don't have to take my wallet inside of this place because they have Apple Pay. I just need to take my phone. And it's really nice. Like, it's there. Like, there are some places that don't that don't have Apple Pay. And I have my wallet in my car for that. And I can just, stick it in my pocket. But there's a lot of places, like the number of places that support Apple Pay are ever increasing. And there's the grocery store is one of them that comes to mind, where it's like, I never take my wallet into the grocery store anymore because I know they have Apple Pay, and it's the fastest way to pay. It's great. I love it. It's like, it's faster than a card. It's faster than cash. It's faster than a check. And even during the pandemic, it was faster when I had to put in my passcode because I was wearing a mask. So, like, certain aspects of that are happening, but I think we both know that there's not going to be a point in our life where we only had to have the phone.
Yeah. And I think really I wasn't as impatient for it until over the past year, because having the watch, I can just double tap that side button and invoke Apple Pay. And that's been glorious. And so I'm ready for that. Just everything. Just give me a double tap on a phone or the watch or whatever. I don't want to deal with all the other cruft anymore.
So I don't have a lot to say about this next topic, but I think it's great that it's there, and that was Swift Playgrounds and Xcode Lite, as you put it, on the iPad. I think that's awesome. Like, I don't ever foresee myself using that, but I'm so glad it's there, because whenever a seemingly feature or part of the ecosystem that I don't use gets a significant update, I know that it's going to roll down in ways that I can't anticipate and will affect me in a good way. So I was excited to see that that's a thing that's happening.
Yeah, I just love the idea that for the first time ever, you could theoretically build an app for the iPad on the iPad.
Yeah. I mean, you could do it before if you jailbroke it, but
Well, and you could semi-do it before if you did all your stuff in Playgrounds and then copied it over to the Mac and just compiled it there, so to speak, I guess. I mean, there are a few more steps involved, but I mean, just the idea of enhancing the ability to do development work on the iPad, I'm all in favor of, even though I will never touch it.
There's no reason that shouldn't be there. And that makes me think of, like, I don't have an iPad I don't have an iPad that runs a version of iOS higher than version 10. The iPad that I have that's years old, it's on 10 something. That's its latest version. And watching the demonstration of the iPad multitasking, where you have an iPad next to you and you can just move your Mac cursor over to it and start working and use your keyboard, I thought that was super cool. Like, that was a sort of tech flex that I think only Apple could pull off.
That ties into, I wanted to call out universal control, because I thought that was one of the things that was just really slick to demo. And that was related, where you could have, in the demo, Craig had an iMac, a MacBook, and an iPad all side by side, and was able to use the keyboard and mouse from any of the devices, really, and just use the three screens as though they were all one seamless iteration, and there was no setup, no tapping for handoff. Like it was very much a seamless user experience, and I like it. It doesn't fit anything in my workflow because I've intentionally been so fixated on I have a laptop and I have that screen, and I need to do different things to make that screen be able to do all the different views and all that I want. So using virtual spaces, that kind of thing. And I like that workflow. I'm comfortable with it. But seeing that in action made me legitimately think I want to make sure my iPad gets updated just so I can try it out, and then have a random portable screen that I could take with me wherever I'm going for whatever reason, and really have it just be a clock that doesn't do anything but just show off that particular feature occasionally for the flex factor.
Yeah. It's like, I could, if I got an iPad, I could figure a way to work out. I could change my workflow where I could integrate the use of that, and that'd be fun. But it really it wouldn't change my workflow now. Like, I wasn't looking for it, but I'm glad it's there because it adds a richness to the ecosystem. Like, I don't know how it's going to affect me, but like that kind of feature that I don't use will in some way affect me in a positive way. So I thought it was super cool. Love doing it. Like, love seeing that. Love that they could do that really cool flex. But I don't foresee myself using it. Like, it's not part of my workflow. I don't even have an iPad that would support it.
Just a quick side note, I did attempt to install the new iPad OS on my iPad. The one that I have that I was attempting to install on is a first generation iPad Pro, then 9 point whatever inch, the smaller of the two. And that didn't go so well. It would boot up and it would bring me to the lock screen, and I would enter my passcode, and then it would just be stuck in a springboard reboot loop until I force reloaded it and then repeat ad nauseum.
Bummer.
Yeah, I mean, I expect that to be worked out in the next iteration of beta cycles anyway, but it was surprising to see. I haven't seen a beta behave that badly in quite some time. So,
yeah. So what's next for you?
I didn't really have much to mention on notes, but I felt like it might be something that manifested itself because of our notes for the show. I like the idea of having some iterations on like highlighting things. The collaborative aspects of the changes to notes sound neat. I'd like to see how they play out in practice, but I don't really have anything to go into on them. I just feel like it's going to be impactful because we're using shared notes.
Yeah. The notes application is one that I've come to like. I feel like it's a feature-rich application at this point. Like the last major overhaul of it really made it a go-to application for documenting certain things, and I'm finding myself documenting more and more things in notes. So,
and the other thing,
this can only help. This only helps.
Go ahead, because I'll change topics as we do.
Oh no, that was it. I was just gonna say it only helps us to add more features like this to the notes application.
The only thing that I would knock against, or that I would say is a negative, one, the quick notes feature, those are basically the new stickies, right? Like that was all I was thinking of as they were talking about the feature.
But we have stickies still. It's still an application.
And they're technically stickies on steroids because it's not just typed text. It can be pretty much any content.
Here's the OS 8 stickies. Here's the modern stickies.
But my gripe about it is that it was Mac and iPad only. That was the one feature that doesn't find its way into the phone. And I'm far more likely to use it on the phone than I am to use it anywhere else.
Yeah, I did not notice that.
But that's a minimal gripe, because I can also, I mean, honestly, how often am I going to use Quick Notes anyway? Like that, it doesn't fit my current workflow model, because I've worked around not having something like that for so long that, yeah, it's a gripe that it's not there, but it's very minimal.
Yeah. AirPods now have, or AirPods Pro and AirPods Max have Find My. Great.
Yeah, the only reason I wanted to mention it is I do like the fact that it's a retroactive addition of a feature to an existing product. You know, the Find My network, of course, got expanded with AirTags and third-party support and whatever else you want to kind of lump in there. I like that they're able to go back and expand usability for older devices in a way that makes sense. That's the only reason I wanted to call it out, because it's a rare instance of retroactively providing an additional benefit.
Hey, they're also doing something like that with the mini HomePod, I think.
I hope so, but I haven't seen any evidence of it.
Oh, there's something about speaker something, I don't know.
That's so vague.
I just saw like the mini HomePod, it's going to have some sort of speaker support with the Apple TV. I just saw a thing and I was like, I think that'll make Jesse happy, but I can't remember if that's what he was looking for.
I'll be honest, I had to step away anyway during the home related segment, and I didn't decide to go back and scrub through it. There may have been something there. The only feature I'm looking for is taking the feature that existed for the big HomePod, where you could tell your Apple TV, hey, you know what? This is your audio output device. I want that for the HomePod Mini. That's it.
I think that's what it is.
If so, great. That's really high on my wish list, and I will be phenomenally happy. I didn't see that particular statement, though.
I think that's exactly what the feature is, but I don't know where to find it on their website.
I will look for it when we're done recording, and that'll be a follow-up. First item of follow-up.
There you go. I just remember seeing, it's like, I think that's the feature that Jesse wants. I don't care.
And I only care in one specific use case. So
I know.
Focus, I'm kind of, I like the premise. I like the idea, and I like the fact that it's more customizable. I don't really use Do Not Disturb that often on my personal device, other than like the bedtime, shut off everything. But I do see the benefit to having a couple of customized versions of that. So I'm intrigued by it. I like the idea. I did set up one to just go through and see what it looked like, and there were a lot more options than I expected there to be, like being able to say these people don't silence, or these apps don't silence, notify people if I have, this particular setting on. I like everything about it. Is it a game changer for me? No, but it is a very nice and welcome addition. Or a very nice refinement, I think, is a good way to think of it.
I know a lot of folks, or I can think of a lot of folks that I would expect will use this if they're already using this with a there are third-party apps that try to provide something like this. This is certainly going to Sherlock a lot of those apps. I think it's a pretty widespread need/want for a lot of folks. I'm just not one of those people, so I'm glad it's one of those things where I'm glad it's there, but I probably won't ever touch that feature. Yeah,
I think I have a better appreciation for it now than I would have if it had come pre-COVID, because being in the same environment so much more, I do like the idea of, you know what, these hours are my personal hours, silence these things, and not being just silence everything except phone calls, right? So I do like it. It would make a lot more sense for me personally if I had the one device instead of two. Because for my use case, I can just set do not disturb on the work device at a certain time frame, and then of course I'll get phone calls if they come through, but that's all I want to get after that time. So I don't know that I will use it, but I really do like that it exists in case I want to explore that in more detail in the future.
Speaking of pre-COVID, pretty much everything they announced for FaceTime should have been there before COVID. Like, that's like, great. Where was this a year and a half ago?
Yeah, I completely agree. The entire time they were talking about the enhancements to FaceTime, I thought, great, so now we have a Zoom alternative that is not
right.
Zoom. Right.
And when I needed it most, it wasn't those things. It's, I'm glad they put it there. Great. But here's where I'll be critical of Apple. This should have been done. This should have been done years ago. Not because or rather, this looks like they're just trying to catch up with the rest of the industry for this type of product. And I'm glad that they did, but why weren't they leading the industry in this type of product? There was a lot of times where FaceTime went by year after year without getting any sort of update. FaceTime was great. It's right there on my phone. It's right there on my Mac. I'm going to use it. FaceTime audio is awesome. Like when you have a good FaceTime audio connection, the audio quality is excellent. So that's great. And I know when the pandemic started, there was a huge uptick in the use of FaceTime, and nobody really saw any problems. Apple's back end was able to handle all of that new extensive use, but these features should have been there already. It's like, I'm glad they're there now. It's a little bit, it's like, I got my vaccine and people stopped wearing masks, and it's kind of the pandemic's not entirely over, but it's not where we were a year ago. So
yeah, everything surrounding FaceTime and SharePlay to me should have been 3 months in to the pandemic. Maybe 4, right? It should have been early on. It should have been, you know what, we've been working on these things. We would have loved to have provided them sooner, but now that we're in this situation, we wanted to go ahead and get them out to you.
Yeah, it should have been iOS 14.2, iOS 14.3, whatever. Just a FaceTime update, just to hey, all of those things those are great things. Those are what you look for in that type of thing. Google Meet has that, all of these features. I'm loving that you can just, send somebody a link and they can open this up in their browser. That's great. But yeah, it's $1 short and a day late.
I do think SharePlay is potentially a fairly significant technology, not because of the pandemic, but because of the promise of not trying to cram things into the same pipeline connection, right? So the way I understand SharePlay to work is that it would serve up whatever that resource is from, I guess, Apple's services, right, directly to the end users. So there's not that compression or issues around trying to send something via your device to another device, that kind of thing. We'll kind of see how it all works in practice. I don't honestly have a good use case for it, other than those times where I need to do some sort of screen sharing, which it's welcome to have, and I do like that finally exists. But that's really the only use case that I can think of that I'm going to personally have out of all of those, at least as far as the most likely one that I'll care to use. I do like that the other features are there. We'll kind of see what it means.
Yeah, there might be something that once it's in our hands, or once it's broadly in the hands of users, you might find a use case that you weren't expecting to find. So,
right.
like you said, I like that it's there. It's a tool now. Whether or not I leverage it is yet to be seen. I'm trying not to let myself get too hopeful about shared with you. I love the idea of shared with you, especially if somebody sends me an article to something and I can open it up in the news app. I like the news app. I don't go there a lot, but when I do, I really like it because everything's formatted in a way that I have come to expect things to be formatted. So I think it's cool that if something is sent to me, it'll if it's in Apple News, I'll be able to see it there. I like that.
So in practice, I like it so far. I just sent you a screenshot from Safari just so that you could see the implementation there. Really, the only person who sends me links via messages anyway is Emily, more often than not. So the most immediate links for shared with you are all from her. But I do like it because there are a lot of times that I will either not click on the link immediately or forget about it and then have to go back to messages and scroll a little bit. So I love the idea. I do agree that it's a needed and welcome addition. The one thing that I'm uncertain of still and kind of question, the use case that I feel like I would probably have the most out of it were related to the whole shared with you with the photos and the fact that there's some level of filtering based on what the device thinks is relevant makes me semi-skeptical of how I'm going to think about it in practice. Like, I love it for links and the news articles and that kind of thing. So far, that's already shown itself to be a welcome addition. But I'm skeptical of the photos implementation. And that's only going to be able to be determined with time, right? I've got to see what it decides to filter and what it doesn't filter. And up to this point, every photo that I've received that I've been cared about, I've just saved a copy anyway. So from initial install date forward, I have to see what it's going to do over the next few weeks to know if it's going to be things that are actually relevant or if it's going to be kind of hit or miss depending on what the content is, right? I all that to say, I like the idea. I'm just skeptical about what it means when you have an objective level of meaningful to the person inclusion.
Yeah.
What I deem meaningful may not be what Apple deems meaningful.
Yeah.
The only other topic that I had on there were the changes relating to family and survivability and et cetera. I don't have any details to go into. I liked the fact that there was some thought there into what happens when a person no longer has access to their account, be it via maybe that I just have completely forgotten my credentials for whatever reason, or I lost my device and so I can't get that secure authentication code if I have multi-factor enabled, which I can't remember if that's an absolute requirement at this point or not. But I have enough devices that technically doesn't apply to me anyway.
Yeah.
But
I couldn't remember what you were talking about. And I was like, oh yeah, actually those are really nice things for, folks.
Yeah, they're great features. They're very welcome additions. I just don't really have anything to say about them. The one thing that I hadn't even thought about is, all right, so in the event of, or at the point that I am no longer here, there's a significant amount of data that I would expect my family would want to access out of my account. And so having the legacy contacts feature is a welcome addition, even if it's not something that I, want to exist, because it means that I'm no longer around to enjoy it. But it makes a lot of sense, and so I do like the enhancements they've done around family in general with access to iCloud accounts. I don't really think there's anything else to say about it, though.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's a good thought. I think I'm glad they thought to do something like this. The only time I've ever seen something kind of like this in the digital world is like if somebody passes away, their Facebook account can be changed to indicate that, and it's sort of I don't want to say a memorial, but there is something about their account can be changed so that folks can still go back and look at their account, know that they've passed away, and in many ways that can be cathartic to look at old things, look at old pictures or whatever. But that's the only thing that I can think of that's similar to this, and so I think it's a nice feature, because I've certainly thought about this, because I've tried to figure out what to do about the minimal digital life that my father had, and he used his iPad a lot, and so at some point I'll probably do that to his account if I can. So I wanted to say the weather app with maps looks cool, and I also thought, why the hell haven't we had maps in the weather app for this long?
Yeah, I actually forgot about that one, and realized that one of the first things I did when I installed the beta was launch weather, just to see what it looked like.
They look great, right?
Yeah,
tell me they look great.
It's phenomenal. It might finally be a replacement for day-to-day dark sky use.
Yeah, well, it's going to have to.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's an aspect of that, right? But the question was, am I going to go with whatever Apple chose to lump into the weather app with the acquisition of dark sky, or am I going to choose another weather app? And just initially pulling it up, I mean, there are certain aspects to the dark sky app that I prefer, especially with the way it presents expected rainfall. But the new weather app looks good, to the point that I really like a lot of the things presented that I don't see elsewhere, or at least not in a handily accessible format.
Would you call this Dark Sky 2.0?
I don't know if I would quite say that. So the thing that I really love about Dark Sky's implementation is, at a glance, whatever factor you're interested in, you can see a very quick visual representation of, is it expected to do X, right? So if you're looking for precipitation, you have color-coded bars where, yep, if it's got blue, it's going to rain or snow or whatever, rain here. But, it's very easy to see expected changes in weather over time, over the course of the day. It's still not that clear in the weather app to the point where you can just glance at it and not have to take a second to decipher it. But now in the weather app, you have what I would describe as widgets in the way they're presented, where you have a heat map over the map, you have a barometer and humidity levels, and a wealth of information available to you quickly and easily that you can understand. The one thing that I still don't like is that they really should have taken a cue from day one on precipitation. That is the one area that I constantly reference the app for over the course of the next hour to 2 hours. What's the expected chance of precipitation? And having that kind of graph for like heaviness of precipitation.
Yeah.
It's just great. Now, for the first time that I recall, I am getting alerts for precipitation starting soon from the weather app, like I would get from Dark Sky.
Dark Sky.
And so I do like that obviously is there, and in practice probably means I'm not going to miss that graphical representation near as much as I think I might. But I really liked how quick and easy it was to just glance and have an idea. I didn't have to look at it and say, okay, what are these numbers referencing? You know, it's the difference between a 1 second and like 5 second check of an app, right? And so we're not talking about a lot, but there's so much that you can glean from a usability perspective with the way Dark Sky presented it previously that I'm going to miss if that doesn't get changed in some fashion.
Yeah, well, it's just kind of like it feels more intuitive, and therefore it feels, that's where you're going to go for information. I feel the same way about Dark Sky. I tend to open the weather app more, but I do feel that way about Dark Sky.
But like the other things about the weather app that I do love the improvements on, so getting beyond just caring about whether I'm going to get caught in a thunderstorm, because we live in the land of random thunderstorms at any given moment. But now there's the inclusion of air quality, sunrise, UV index, wind speeds with a graphical representation, rainfall over the last 24 hours. Like, there's a lot of useful information at your fingertips that did not exist previously. So I do love the enhancements. The only thing is that, like, for the forecast, instead of having a cloud and droplets in a percentage, like, I want to know where over the course of that day the rainfall is expected, not just the percentage for the day. That's the part that Dark Sky got so well. And so that's the piece that I really wish they would have either kept or found another way to present in as clear and concise a manner.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. I'm going to miss it when it finally quits working. But until then, they can pry it from my cold, dead hands.
Yeah.
And I think that pretty much takes care of everything I wanted to touch on. I did want to mention that we were both wrong about any potential hardware announcements, even though that's not necessarily surprising.
No, it's not surprising.
I just kind of expected something on that front, just because it seems like there's news there, but I didn't necessarily expect it at WWDC. I think I kind of talked about that with the event where they did the iMac, that it didn't feel like the timing between the two events was right. I thought they were just going to hold everything for WWDC, and instead they announced the iMacs previously, which makes sense in retrospect. But I'm not surprised, but I think there's something there coming soon.
Yeah, I'm assuming that it's just not ready to be talked about, and there's no pressure for it to be ready for WW because it's a software. It's about software, not necessarily hardware. So, yeah, disappointing, a little surprising, not at all.
I think with that, do you have any closing thoughts surrounding WWDC, or do you want to just kind of halt on a very odd and halting note?
I thought some of the videos the videos that they put in there were pretty funny. We didn't talk at all about the noise canceling that FaceTime has. It looks pretty cool. I hope it works great as the demo. I thought the demo was hilarious with the kid walking in with the leaf blower and blowing all the stuff off of blowing the stuff in the house off of the shelves and things. I thought that was hilarious. I thought the opening video, I missed parts of it. I want to go back and watch it, but the parts that I saw were hilarious. I thought it was a lot of fun. My kids were watching it with me and laughing, and so I thought that was cool. It was cool it's those those opening videos for any other events when they have a video like this. Specifically, I feel like they've been a part of WWDC for the past few years. They've been hit or miss, and I thought they got a pretty good one on this year.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the microphone, the audio enhancements in general. I'm actually more interested in the opposite end of that. I don't remember what they called it. Wide spectrum.
Yes. You know what you're talking about.
Basically, the ability to say, all right, don't isolate or cancel or really do anything. Just take all the noise around and shove it through and, let someone listen. Just because we've never really had audio communication like that. Assuming that it works the way it's discussed. Everything that we've known has always had some level of compression or filtering. I guess maybe the old wired analog phone would be the closest, but that was old technology that obviously couldn't capture the full spectrum of what's around anyway. So I'm really intrigued just to play with the different options and kind of see what it means. Just having that level of flexibility and choice is cool.
I think so too. More choices, more features, better.
And nothing that stood out as a groan, why are you focusing any effort here? Or I don't care at all about this. Even the stuff that I feel like I'm probably not going to use, there's still a level of interest that's kind of neat, And so I think overall that also signals a certain level of maturity and understanding of where to focus efforts in the platforms.
Yeah. Yeah, everything was like, I know a lot of, the things that I didn't want, I was like, I know a lot of people, I do know a lot of people that are going to like this feature. So, again, I felt, watching it when it was over, I felt underwhelmed, but when I, thought about when I watched other people talking about the features that are, I was like, yeah, that's a cool feature. Other people got me more excited about the features than putting it together, watching the keynote there. So that was kind of weird, but yeah, nothing felt major or huge. Hopefully there will be some under the hood refinements that these are relatively small features or not small features, but I don't know. It just didn't seem big. It didn't seem I think last year or 2 years ago, it was just jam packed. I was I don't know how they fit all this in kind of presentation, and it just didn't feel that way this year.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like it was jam-packed from the speed they were trying to get through stuff without providing detail. But I feel the same kind of sense of underwhelmingness, I guess, for lack of better phrasing, because so much of it just doesn't seem like anything beyond a natural iteration. Yeah. But then taking a step back and realizing, but I don't have to use my iPhone to do it. I can use it on any of my devices. Having all of that combined gave me a greater sense of appreciation for what they pulled off in what had to be a difficult year from a collaboration standpoint anyway.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, and that's something we should all be appreciative of, or at least recognize that the effort, the ability to be able to do something like that. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, that does it for me as well.
It's a full lid.
Real quick bit of housekeeping. I put a script for the outro that I'll record starting with this episode. If you have a specific interest in any kind of feedback aimed your way, change the wording on that particular line item to match what you would like for me to put. But otherwise, I'm going to use what I put in that script.
Okay.
Just because it made me laugh when I wrote it. So, and that's it. That was the only bit of housekeeping. Just giving you a heads up that I'm going to record that at some point in the next few days. And so if you do want anything specific called out,
I'm just not reading it.
Let me know. All right. That calls it a show.
All right.
Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.